What does it really take for a young athlete to step onto one of tennis's biggest stages, not just to compete, but to carry expectations, attention, and pressure all at once? That question sits quietly behind a match that, on the surface, might look like just another early round clash. Eala is set to face Leylah Fernandez in the round of 32 at the Stuttgart Open. A rising star meets an already established name. A challenger meets someone who has already proven she belongs. But this isn't just about tennis. It's about timing, pressure, identity, and what it means to grow up in public. Let's take a moment to ground ourselves in what's happening. Eala, one of the most promising young players coming out of the Philippines, has earned her place in the main draw of a prestigious tournament. On the other side of the net is Leylah Fernandez, known globally after her breakthrough run to the US Open final in 2021. This match, at least on paper, is a test of experience versus potential. But if we stop there, we miss the real story. Because matches like this are not only played on clay courts, they're played in the mind. And increasingly, they're played online. When we talk about rising athletes like Eala, we often focus on talent, rankings, and performance. But what's less visible is the invisible weight that comes with being labeled the future. That phrase sounds exciting. It sounds hopeful. But it also creates a kind of pressure that doesn't show up on a scoreboard. Eala isn't just playing for herself. She's representing a nation that sees her as a symbol of possibility. Every match becomes more than a match, it becomes a statement. And when you're still developing your game, your identity, and your confidence, that kind of spotlight can be both motivating and overwhelming. On the other side, Leylah Fernandez knows what it feels like to suddenly become a global name. Her run at the US Open wasn't just about wins, it was about expectations that followed immediately after. Once you've reached that level, people don't see you as a rising player anymore. They see you as someone who should win. That shift from underdog to expected contender is one of the hardest transitions in sports. So when these two players meet, we're not just watching a tennis match. We're watching two different stages of pressure intersect. Let's talk about mental space for a moment. In modern tennis, physical preparation is only half the equation. The other half, arguably the more complex one, is psychological resilience. For Eala, stepping onto a court against a player like Fernandez isn't just a technical challenge. It's a mental one. How do you approach someone who has already proven themselves on the biggest stages? Do you play freely with nothing to lose? Or do you feel the weight of proving that you belong? And for Leylah Fernandez, the challenge is different but equally demanding. How do you stay grounded when you're expected to win? How do you avoid underestimating a younger opponent while also managing your own standards? This is where matches are often decided not in the rallies, but in the moments between them. The pause before a serve. The reaction after an error. The internal dialogue that no audience can hear. Now layer onto that the reality of media exposure. Today's athletes are not just competitors, they're public figures from a very early stage in their careers. Eala's journey isn't unfolding quietly. It's being followed, shared, and analyzed in real time across platforms. Every win gets celebrated instantly. Every loss gets dissected just as quickly. That kind of visibility changes how athletes experience success and failure. In the past, a young player could develop somewhat privately, making mistakes without millions of people watching. Today, those mistakes can become viral moments. They can shape narratives before a player has even had time to grow. And that brings us to social media. Social media has completely transformed the relationship between athletes and the public. On one hand, it's empowering. Players can connect directly with fans, share their stories, and build their own identities beyond the sport. Eala, for example, represents more than her results. She represents a new generation of athletes who are visible, relatable, and accessible. But there's another side to this. The same platforms that celebrate can also criticize, sometimes harshly, sometimes unfairly. A young athlete doesn't just read encouragement. They also see doubt, comparison, and pressure. Comments about performance, expectations, and even personal choices become part of the environment they operate in. And unlike traditional media, social media doesn't have clear boundaries. It's always there. before a match, after a match, even during a match. So when Eala steps onto the court in Stuttgart, she's not just carrying her training and preparation. She's also carrying the noise, both positive and negative, that comes from being visible in a digital world. Leylah Fernandez, having already gone through a surge of global attention, understands this dynamic deeply. She knows what it feels like to go from rising star to widely recognized figure almost overnight. And that experience can be both an advantage and a burden. There's also something interesting about how we, as viewers, engage with matches like this. We tend to frame them in simple terms: experience versus youth, favorite versus underdog, established versus emerging. But real life and real competition is rarely that simple. Because youth can bring fearlessness. Experience can bring pressure. Underdogs can play freely. Favorites can feel constrained. So the outcome of this match isn't just about skill. It's about who manages their internal world better in that moment. Who adapts faster? Who stays present? Who handles the weight, whether it's expectation or opportunity? Another layer worth considering is identity. For Eala, every match at this level contributes to how she sees herself as a professional athlete. Is she someone who belongs here? Is she someone who can compete with top players consistently? Those questions don't get answered overnight. They get shaped through experiences like this, through matches that test not just ability, but belief. For Leylah Fernandez, identity is about maintaining and evolving. Once you've reached a certain level, the challenge becomes sustaining it while continuing to grow. It's not just about proving yourself once, it's about doing it again and again under different circumstances. And that's where consistency becomes a mental challenge as much as a physical one. Let's zoom out even further. Why does a match like this matter beyond tennis? Because it reflects something broader about modern performance culture. We live in a time where people are expected to achieve earlier, perform consistently, and do it all under constant visibility. Whether it's athletes, creators, or professionals in other fields, the pattern is similar. Early promise leads to attention. Attention leads to expectation. Expectation leads to pressure. And how individuals navigate that cycle often defines their long-term path. In that sense, watching Eala face Leylah Fernandez is also watching two individuals navigate that cycle in real time. There's also a human element that often gets overlooked. Behind the rankings and headlines are people who are still figuring things out. Eala is still growing, not just as a player, but as a person. Her reactions, her decisions, her confidence, they're all evolving. Leylah Fernandez, despite her achievements, is also still young. Her journey is still unfolding. The version of her we see today is not the final version. And that's important to remember. Because when we reduce athletes to results, we miss the process that actually makes those results meaningful. So what should we watch for in this match? Not just the score. Watch the body language. Watch how they respond to pressure moments. Watch how they reset after mistakes. Watch how they handle momentum shifts. These are the details that tell a deeper story. Because in many ways, this match is less about who wins and more about how each player handles the moment they're in. And maybe that's the most interesting part. We often think of sports as a clear, outcome-driven activity. Win or lose. Advance or go home. But beneath that clarity is a complex, human experience filled with uncertainty, growth, and adaptation. Eala stepping onto that court is not just trying to win a match. She's stepping into a space where she can test her readiness, her mindset, and her place in the sport. Leylah Fernandez, on the other side, is not just defending her position. She's navigating the expectations that come with it. And when those two realities meet, something meaningful happens, regardless of the final score. In the end, this isn't just about Stuttgart. It's not just about one round in one tournament. It's about what it means to compete in a world where performance is constantly visible, where growth happens under observation, and where pressure is part of the environment from the very beginning. It's about how young athletes learn to carry not just their rackets, but their narratives. And maybe, as viewers, it's also a reminder to look beyond results, to see the people, the process, and the pressure that shape every moment we watch. Before we wrap up, here are a few questions to think about. Do young athletes today face too much pressure too early in their careers? How does social media change the way we judge success and failure in sports? And when you watch a match, do you focus more on the result or the story behind it?